Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Niladri Chaudhary, President of Green Computing Foundation, bringing you the Sustainable IT Awareness Program. So let us start with it. The modules that we are going to cover in this: one, basic concepts about sustainability and sustainable IT. We will move on to discuss further on what is sustainable IT, what are the puzzle pieces of sustainable IT, and how sustainable IT can be achieved with DevSecOps, SRE, VSM, all working together. So let us start with the basic concepts. Here we will see what is sustainability, what are the SDG goals or the Sustainability Development Goals, a bit about the Paris Agreement. We will also understand a little bit on sustainable finance, greenhouse gas protocol, and circular economy. So what is sustainability? As per the definition, sustainability is a concept that aims to maintain the balance between economic prosperity, social well-being, and environmental preservation, so that these three pillars can coexist in harmony and meet the needs of both current and future generation. So what we are saying is, what we are practicing today, we are creating a lot of negative impact. I think one common thing that you must all have experienced is during the lockdown period of COVID. When there was lockdown, there was no car, there was no pollution happening from the cars. People were all staying at home. That is the time we saw a lot of the birds coming back to our balconies. Different types of birds, different colors, and different kind of ways that they were communicating with each other. The sounds were different, the chirpings were different. But the moment the lockdown was over, when we came back again with our cars on the road, we traveling, our bikes on the road, again those birds disappeared. Similarly, when we are doing anything, when we are traveling in an aircraft, when we are buying things and getting a lot of plastic packaging that comes along with us, when we are practicing IT, we are all creating a lot of carbon footprint. We are contributing to creation of various kinds of gases which are toxic. Not only just the carbon dioxide, but also things like methane, etc. So the idea is, how do we do whatever is required for us without affecting the planet in a negative manner? Everything will actually affect the planet in negative manner, but the point is how we can reduce that negative impact. What can we do to balance that negative impact with substantial more positive impact, like planting of trees? There is a difference between sustainability and ESG. I think everybody has started hearing the word ESG, environment, social, and governance. While the social and governance talks about various other things, E is the part where we are talking about the environment. But S and G is required for E to be also successful. We need diversity in our teams. We need to look at from where are we getting materials, the raw materials, the lower the use of metals in our laptops, in our mobile phones, we will be able to reduce even geopolitical tensions which happens. Because the minerals are there, let's say, coming from countries like Africa. So everybody wants to have more power over there. Any country which has more deposits of fossil fuel, deposits of metals, rare metals, they are the ones who are going to control or try to control the world. So we need to start looking at those aspects. So if we can reduce the consumption of those metals and all, we will be able to get better equality among different parts of the world and wealth dispersion. Governance obviously is required. Without governance, things are not going to be working in a discipline. We need to look at cybersecurity. We need to look at other security aspects. We need to have proper governance of including data governance and so on. So what is the difference between sustainability and ESG? Sustainability and ESG are related concepts, but have different focuses. Sustainability is a broad concept that encompasses economic, social, and environmental considerations, while ESG focuses specifically on environmental, social, and governance factors that impact a company's operation and long-term prospects. So when we are practicing it within the organization for understanding how it impacts the organization's profitability, organization's way of working, and so on, that is ESG. When we are looking at it in a global perspective, then it is sustainability. So ESG is a subset of sustainability. So there are 17 sustainable development goals, and these were created by the United Nations. And this are interrelated goals to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that humanity enjoys peace and prosperity by 2030. So one is about no poverty, 2 is about zero hunger, 3 is about good health and well-being, 4 is about quality education, 5 is about gender equality, 6 is about clean water and sanitation, 7 is about affordable and clean energy, 8 is about decent work and economic growth, 9 is about industry innovation and infrastructure, 10 is about reduced inequalities, 11 is about sustainable cities and communities, 12 is about responsible consumption and production, 13 is about climate action, 14 is about life below water, 15 life on land, 16 peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for goals is 17. This last point is very important because sustainability is about changing the mindset. Sustainability is about data, and sustainability is possible only when there is an ecosystem which is working, built on partnership, built on trust, built on everybody having that common goal. If you look at IT, things like 13 climate action, things like 14 life, if you are looking at responsible consumption and protection, that is 12, 17, these are more relevant for IT, whereas others also is possible. For example, if you are talking about decent work and economic growth, IT can help in spreading the education. We saw during the COVID time how the different villages of different parts of the world could get access to training through online courses. So IT can enable sustainability in various ways. Now let us look at the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement, adopted by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, in 2015, is a key international agreement aimed at addressing the issue of climate change. So many of the countries actually signed this agreement. US did not sign it at that point of time. So what are the main things that it is talking about? First thing that is important is to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degree centigrade. and hold an average increase in the global temperature to 2 degrees centigrade. Why is this required? Because if the planet becomes warmer and hotter, there will be a change in what is happening. I think we are already experiencing that. We saw a lot of floods in countries like Dubai. We saw flood due to rain in places like the Europe, Germany, and so on. We saw that there is rise of the level in the sea, and this can lead to a lot of island countries to drown. The glaciers are melting, which will further increase the seawater. There will be more changes. So where there is you are not getting rain and all, suddenly you will get a lot of rain. Where there is rain, you suddenly start getting drought there. And all these are going to impact business. We have already seen Microsoft and Google having their data centers crashed because the internal cooling of the data center could not handle the kind of heat that was there in the environment outside. So those are business impacts. It is climate risk is becoming a business risk. Save and increase forest area to capture greenhouse gases for the atmosphere. Why is that? So that when there is a lot of this carbon dioxide, methane, and all these toxic gases are coming out, that makes the environment hotter. And the only way to reduce it is to capture those carbon and convert it into something which is like oxygen, which the trees are very capable of. You must have seen how the Amazon forests are depleting, and we need to start making them better, rejuvenate them so that more and more such green is happening, and more we are able to capture or convert carbon. Similarly, water like sea are big places where carbon gets absorbed. But on the other side, we see we had a lot of these ponds, big ponds, big water bodies in our cities. But now what we see, lot of us very rapidly see the depletion of those ponds, and it is becoming bigger houses on top of those, and those water bodies are no longer there. So we are actually losing the carbon capture mechanism which was already there. We have to start building those up again. Make finance consistent and aligned with agreement goals. So we have to fund only projects which are going to give green results. Only organizations which are practicing green in their entire operation, including green IT. Increase ability to adapt to climate change. The SEBI in India has specifically brought out a mandate that these organizations which are into financing, 65% of their fund has to be given only to green companies and green projects. Only 35% is available to the others. So even as a startup, if we have to still be advantageous in terms of getting some fund, where we already know that there is a winter of funds for startups that are happening, we need to practice and showcase that yes, we are substantiated with proof that we are practicing green practices, green IT. So the key points in Paris Agreement is long-term goal. So we have to move from short-term gains to long-term benefits. There has to be nationally determined contributions, and you must have seen in COP28, which happened just last month, there has been many countries which has pledged funds that they are going to provide for such green transitions. There has to be transparency. So every country has to be transparent in terms of stating where they are and how they are improving and where things are not going as per plan. Every 5 years, there has to be a review, and 2023 is the first year for the review. and there has to be a support for developing countries and underdeveloped countries by the developed countries. So developed countries have to pledge funds for providing that for the developing countries and underdeveloped countries to transition to greener scenarios. So there is, if you look at the Paris Agreement, if you look at the SDGs, there is a lot of links. So some of the very apparent, obvious links that we can see. Paris Agreement and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals both focused on promoting sustainable development and addressing global changes. So you can see there is the climate action, which is SDG 13, sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, life on land 15, clean energy, SDG 7, partnerships, SDG 17. All these are very well connected to the Paris Agreement. What is not there in the Paris Agreement, but the SDGs are looking at, is empowering responsible consumption and sustainable production in the digital age, which actually relates to climate action, which relates to life on land, which relates to clean energy. That's why it's not specifically mentioned in the Paris Agreement. So environmental, social, and governance aspects of sustainable finance. Let us look at finance because that's what we were looking at, that finance has to play a very significant role in creating sustainable countries, sustainable organizations. So we have to look from the finance perspective: climate, biodiversity, greenhouse gas emission, water consumption, pollution, wastewater management, use of renewable energy; social in terms of inequality, human rights, labor relations, community impacts, supplier relationships, working conditions, health and safety, diversity; governance, executive compensation, transparency, board independence, shareholder rights, taxation, anti-corruption, political contributions. Now, there is a concept of sustainable finance and regenerative finance. Sustainable finance refers to the integration of ESG considerations into financial decision making and investment process. Goal of sustainable finance is to promote long-term value creation and ensure that financial markets support sustainable development. So this is where the investors are looking. So if you are a startup, a technology startup, a fintech startup, your investors are going to look at these aspects and then only they are going to finance. Whereas regenerative finance is a term used to describe the concept that integrates financial practices with social responsibility, sustainability, and regeneration. Regenerative finance aims to create economic systems that go beyond generating financial returns to focus on restoring and enhancing social, environmental, and economic well-being. So there is an interlink between the two, but there is a difference between the two. Now, sustainable finance, the key elements are ESG integration, green and social bonds, impact investing, sustainable investment funds, corporate social responsibilities. And if you see, this is where IT plays an important part. So all the neobanks that you look at, all the fintech organizations that you look at, all the financial institutes that are using blockchain, I'm not talking about crypto, but I'm talking about blockchain, and helping in through smart contracts, through blockchain, this facilitating the green and social bonds without a middleman in between and with more security is where IT is going to help. The benefit of sustainable finance is mitigating environmental and social risk. It will attract capital. It will help in improving access to finance, as I mentioned. Obviously, it enhances reputation, increase efficiency, meet regulatory requirements, encourage innovation, foster collaboration, align with the SDGs, and future-proof a business, which is resilience. Now, this regulation part is also important. Today, there are new assurances which are coming up, like the IAASB 5000, where it is saying that the auditors, the finance auditors, the chartered accountants, they are not going to only audit financial accounting of the business, but also what is the climate accounting, what is the carbon accounting, what is the impact and risk and opportunities related to climate, related to the climate change that is happening, and how the organizations are doing better. Carbon accounting, carbon marketplace are areas where it makes sense. Like, for example, whatever you are doing in organization, you can say that, okay, we are doing this much, which leads to this much of carbon footprint creation. Now let us say, okay, we decide that $25 per ton or per kg is what we are going to use as a calculation. So how much carbon footprint we create, we multiply that with 25 per kg to come to a negative figure, financial figure, a dollar figure. And how much, by taking different actions, how much of carbon have we been able to reduce, the emission we have been able to reduce, we multiply that with that $25, let's say, and we get the positive impact that also comes in the balance sheet. And we have to see that this negative is becoming lesser and lesser and come to positive. So if you look at a framework like SBTi, you as an organization have to give a commitment that over a period of time, you are going to reduce your emission by 90%. It is a very, very stringent process, but organizations are going for it. And if you look at organizations which are less with manufacturing, less with transportation and movement of fleets and all, using IT more, IT will play a significant role in the carbon footprint creation. So we have to responsibly do practice IT. Regenerative economic finance comes from regenerative economic systems. And what is that? More investment in natural assets. That is, you are looking at profit being value assigned to protection of natural asset, increase in demand, positive impact on people and planet, leading to profit distributed evenly, which again helps in value assigned to protection of natural asset. And this flow continues. Regenerative finance is very strongly aligned to regenerative economic systems. Now we have to understand what is the GHG protocol. So GHG protocol is about the gas emission. And there are three types of scopes, as we call it, of emission. Scope 1, which is the direct emissions, like combustion of fossil fuel. So if you are using diesel, if your company is buying diesel to run the generator that they own, to run their data centers, that is your direct emission. That is your carbon emission, which is at scope 1. If the company owns the vehicles which goes and brings people and you buy diesel for it, those are direct emissions. Indirect emissions, like purchase of electricity, heat, or steam for running your data center, for running your office, for all these comes under scope 2. And anything beyond that is scope 3. So when you are buying your laptop, a lot of energy has been used for mining of the metals. Each of the laptop or the mobile phone motherboards has 50 different types of metals from the periodic table. And only 17% of that can be reused, can be recycled, or rather it is collected only for recycling. Only 17% is collected for recycling. 83% goes in landfills, which creates further emission of toxic gases. And out of that 17%, a very small percent, which is around 2 or 3 different elements, can be extracted for reuse. So reuse is not really a good option for reducing the GHG protocol. We need to remove the use of it. We need to reduce the use of it, which leads to other things like circular economy. Your company, you go on business trips, that is your company's carbon footprint. Your IT asset disposition, your e-waste, that is your creates your carbon footprint. That is also part of your scope 3. Renting or leasing vehicles, outsourced activities like you are using your cloud service providers, you are using your other IT service providers, their carbon footprint is your scope 3. And today, more and more regulations are coming. For example, by 2026, every organization which is doing business or doing business in Europe has to declare, has to publish their scope 3 emissions also. Otherwise, they will not be able to do business in Europe or with Europe. So the GHG protocol is a globally recognized accounting and reporting standard for greenhouse gas emissions. It was developed by the World Resources Institute and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and provides a systematic approach to measuring, reporting, and managing GHG emissions. The GHG protocol includes guidelines for accounting for emission from the direct sources such as energy use, transportation, and waste management, as well as emissions from indirect sources such as purchased electricity, steam, and heat. The protocol also provides guidance on how to report emissions and emissions reductions and how to use emissions data to set targets and measure progress towards sustainability goals. Now, scope 3 emission is very difficult to capture. This also requires trust, and this requires you to put it within your contracts so that your service providers provide you with that information. So as I said, that because we have very little reusability, or rather recyclability, we need to move into circular economy. The more and more we are using, the more and more raw materials have to be mined, which is not good. More and more trees needs to be cut. More and more fossil fuel needs to be used. So we have to design our products and services in a sustainable manner. So in earlier days, we used to be able to have modular products. You could replace parts and keep working on it. Somewhere down the line, we lost that. A mobile, we can't even take out a battery. We are so happy and we are so gaga about our EVs. What are we going to do with the batteries? Will you buy a second-hand EV where the battery is completely gone? What are you going to do with that EV, that vehicle? We have to start thinking from those point of view and see how to use something which is designed in a manner to be used for longer period of time. We have seen in our companies every 3 years, the laptop can be changed, or 2.5 years, laptop can be changed. How do we ensure that it can be moved to 5 years or 8 years? How can we move the servers from 5 years to 8 years or 10 years? It requires change in the procurement process. It requires change in the way that we purchase, the evaluation that we do. We may need to pay more at the beginning to get such products which are modular, which can be changed, and we can still work on it with the latest technology. For example, Fairphone is such kind of a phone. We have to change our business model from selling a product to a subscription-based scenario. Many things like that have to be thought so that the design, production, retailing of it, consumption, reuse, repair, collection of the end, at the end of the life cycle, recycling, all of it works together. So circular economy is an economic system in which resources are kept in use for as long as possible, extracting the maximum value from them before they are eventually recycled or restored back into the environment. The aim is to minimize the waste, pollution, and reduce the use of finite resources. If you look at a laptop, the usage is only 10 to 15% of the life cycle carbon footprint or emission it creates. 85 to 90% of that emission comes from the manufacturing and transportation of the laptop. Now imagine that with the number of people that are working in the organization, and every 3 years you are changing that laptop. That is huge. And that's why McKinsey's report says that end user devices are the biggest producer of carbon footprint and not the data centers. However, the current scenario of AI, generative AI, is also putting a huge amount of pressure on the power usage, water usage in the data centers too. So in a circular economy, products are designed to be reused, repaired, refurbished, or recycled rather than discarded as waste of after a single use. This closed loop system creates a new value chain in which waste and emissions are reduced, economic growth is decoupled from resource usage, and natural capital is conserved. So there are multiple companies who have now started giving like Fairphone for the mobile phones. Nokia also, I think, very recently mentioned that they are going to create these modular phones which can be repaired, which can be easily, parts can be replaced. Similarly, many of the companies for laptop manufacturers are doing that. And they are also taking back laptops at the end of the life cycle after a certain number of users, paying money for that or adjusting that money with your new purchases. So we need to look at the key stages. So the first starts with designing. We need to have sustainable design. And that's why sustainable design thinking is required. Designing products for longevity, repairability, and recyclability to extend their life and reduce waste. Sharing and reusing products and materials to reduce the need for new resources and conserve existing ones. Recycling and regenerating materials to create new value from waste and reduce the need for virgin resources. Regenerating natural systems to restore biodiversity and ecosystem services and support the overall health of the planet. We need to start rethinking the way that we do business, the way that we are using things. And a lot of it, most probably, we will get from what our ancestors used to do. So there is a need for design for circularity. We have to adopt circular business model, as I said, subscription kind of models, maybe others that will come up. Use renewable resources. Renewable resources is not just about the energy. It's not about using nuclear or using solar or wind. In everything we have to, for example, plastic usage, water bottles. Can we use something else? We get a lot of this plastic packaging. Can we look at a lot of these locally grown grasses and like in India, in the eastern part, there is a small bamboo kind of thing that is used. Can we use those kind of things for our packaging, which is bio disposable, biodegradable? It is not hampering anything. It is not taking up water for production because it grows anywhere and everywhere. How about using those kind of things? And it is gives whatever the characteristics that we need to give for the work. So try and start thinking of doing those kind of things. Reduce waste, use life cycle assessment, increase the product lifespan, adopt a reverse logistics, and collaborate with stakeholders. We need to invest in R&D, because if you see the previous one, whatever we are talking about requires innovation, requires us to think differently. And that is possible only when we practice, when we experiment. So investing in R&D has to be a major component. Investing in R&D, experimenting it regularly, giving the time. It is not just the money, the time for every person to try out new ways of doing things, implement waste to value solutions, embrace digital transformation, but sustainable digital transformation, promote circularity in supply chain, develop circular performance metrics, educate stakeholders, advocate for policy change. So there is a concept which came up called the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line that was there is people, planet, and profit. That means we have to make sure that we are contributing to the people, to the planet, and the profit. This means that we have to move away from thinking only to satisfy the need of the shareholders. Shareholders are only one stakeholder. We have to look at many stakeholders. So obviously shareholders, customers, employees, the business, and environment or community. So all the five stakeholders we have to look, so that we create value for all of them, not just value for shareholders. And this is very, very important for people at the board level, board of director level, the independent directors, to start understanding that. There is a new concept which has come up, which is the new triple bottom line, which is saying, which is more on how to do it, is about reserve, restore, and rewild. We have to reduce to reserve. We have to reduce our work, our consumption, to reserve what we already have. So if we are using less fossil fuels, we are going to have the reserve still there. So we have to reduce our consumption. Do we really need this much of consumption? Do we need AI to create those beautiful pictures, or it should be used only where it can help in finding a medicine for cancer? That is the kind of thought process that needs to be there for each one of us who are working it. Because sustainability is not rocket science, it is not technology. It is change of our mindset. And it has to be practiced individually first and then collaboratively. Then only as a group we will come. But first it has to be our own realization in our own place. What are we doing even at our home before we start looking at our office? Restore, reuse to restore. So restore, we reuse more, we use the same thing for longer period of time, the circularity that we talked about. And we have to restore it. So we are planting more and more trees. We should be able to create more water bodies around us and not eat away those water bodies to build something. And finally, rewild. Rewild is a new concept. That's why I've kept a separate slide for it. Rewilding is a bigger goal than recycling and is more permanent in outcome. It is a process by which lost ecosystems and species can be reborn to maintain planetary balance. Pleistocene Park is an example of a rewilding project. So if there are barren lands, how can we make those barren lands to grow flora and fauna, which can grow in that and make that land a big pit for the carbon dioxide to be absorbed? An extensive study published in the journal Nature points out that by restoring only 15% of the degraded land in critical areas, 30% of carbon from post-industrial revolution can be locked away. See the huge impact that we can have. In addition, biodiversity has the chance to recover. With this restoration, there is potential to save 60% of the species expected to disappear. And we know that these species are required. You know that a bee, different types of insects actually spreads the seeds, which creates more plants, more trees. And that's how it keeps growing. We need to bring that balance. We cannot just think only from the point of view of some technology that we are using, only from our purpose, selfishly, because we are not doing it. And there is solution in the nature itself. So let us come to what is sustainable IT. So we will see sustainable IT and IT enabling sustainability, non-IT, levers of sustainable IT, ESG for IT, risks, and employee engagement. So sustainable IT definition refers to the practice of designing, using, and disposing of technology in a way that reduces its negative impact on the environmental and promotes sustainable development. So it is all-encompassing, holistic, end-to-end, from the time we are getting a need to the time a value creation is happening, the entire life cycle. You call it CI/CD pipeline, you call it value stream, whatever you call it, it is in the entirety we have to practice sustainable IT. Sustainable IT can be achieved through a variety of practices, including using renewable energy sources, reducing energy consumption through virtualization and consolidation, extending the life of equipment through repair and refurbishment, promoting responsible disposal and recycling of electronic waste, and using sustainable material in production of technology. So now you can see whatever we talked as the basic concepts, we are now implementing it in what we are using for sustainable IT. You can see some major footprints, how much of power that is being consumed, how much of water that is being consumed, how much of carbon dioxide equivalent we are sending. We are now at 4% of the global emission, expected to rise to 21% by 2040 and to 17% by 2030. I mean, it may be more than that actually. The way, if we do not practice sustainable IT in an ethical manner, in a responsible manner, it can be a huge, huge thing, a very big negative impact, and we are the only ones to be blamed for. It is important because it is about reputation of the brand. Today, customers have started asking, every RFPs are having a section. I mean, that is only a tick mark in a checkbox, but companies are now today, and more specifically European companies, are asking the service providers, the product vendors, how green are you? And if you are not green, they are ready to terminate the contracts. They are ready to give it to a more greener organization, a greener product and service. Obviously, when you practice sustainability, it is about improvement in your efficiency, improvement in your effectiveness, and that's why cost savings happens. So instead of focusing on cost saving and taking wrong actions, you focus on sustainability and you get cost savings. You are definitely going to be more compliant, and more regulations are coming up. More organizations today are getting penalized, get taken to court because they cannot substantiate the claims that they are happening, claims they are making in terms of the sustainability, in terms of the greenness of them. Innovation, we need innovation, and we are going to be more benefit. We are going to get more benefit. We are going to be ahead of our competition when we have more innovation and we bring more innovative products and services. We can bring more employee engagement because today's workforce, the younger generations, are more conscious, more considering the green of the organization. They are coming and asking that we are going to work in a company which is more green. Even if there is more money being paid by an organization which is not green, they are not doing it. So talent acquisition becomes a problem. If we are green, we will be able to attract more. We will have more employee engagement because innovation is one of the factors. So people wants to innovate, be part of that innovation. And finally, the social responsibility part of our journey will also be taken care of. The second part of sustainable IT is IT enabling sustainability. Today, every business process is IT enabled. So the the sustainability related information should come directly from the automation that is running, which is enabling the processes. So the ERPs, the distributed systems that are there should be the ones which are going to provide, capture, and provide the sustainability information. That will also help it to make it much more authentic than some individual going and writing and creating a report. It is like same as cybersecurity. A thing which comes directly from the system is more authentic than somebody going around and filling a form or creating a report. So we need to digitize the process. We can use things like smart building technology, virtual meetings, renewable energy sources, e-commerce, supply chain management, cloud computing, predictive maintenance, recycling, waste management, sustainable product design. All these enables sustainability in the business itself. A logistics company use technology to create an algorithm to reroute their fleet of vehicles to deliver goods. By doing so, they overall reduce the total movement of the vehicles, thus reducing the amount of diesel fuel purchase, which means that much less carbon footprint. This is not a rocket science. Again, this is IT thinking from the business point of view to see how it can enable business to be more sustainable. So from the Green Computing Foundation, we have created this comprehensive sustainable IT framework, which you can also see in the website https://greencomputingfoundation.org, and you can try and practice it. The 5 main objectives are reduction in the emission of infrastructure, increase energy efficiency and reduce rework in the software development lifecycle, circularity in IT assets, e-waste removal, and wastewater reduction. And all of this is to be thought through in the entire life cycles from customer need to customer value creation. We need to have user stories, use cases for each and every part of this, even from the sustainability point of view. And that has some overarching guidelines like long-term benefits as opposed to short-term gains. Sustainable policies, as I said, you have to change policies not only within IT, but other places like your procurement, like your purchase, your finance, etc. And there has to be a continuous improvement and through innovation. Now, how all of this is guardrailed by the 12 points in the Sustainable IT Manifesto, which is mentioned here. I'm not going to read through it, but these are the 12 guidelines that are there. And how do we implement it? First, by creating the awareness. Awareness today with this about sustainability with IT is the lowest. So by training, organizing those trainings, we need to create the awareness across the board. Even if you look at the SEBI related things like, for example, the BRSR guidelines that they have said that you have the top 1,000 listed companies have to publish their sustainability report in the BRSR framework format. BRSR require one of the mandate is starting from the board level to the execution level, everybody has to be trained on sustainability. And it is not that you are claiming that you have done it, you have to show proof of that. Consciousness. How do you bring consciousness? By assessment. If you look at the Green Computing Foundation, there is a 80-question assessment, self-assessment available. You can fill it up. We will provide a report on that, a very elementary report. We have more extensive 250 plus question assessment, which goes with consulting. And finally, enablement through execution. This is the overall framework. And now we are building the best practices in each of the areas and how to use it. You'll be able to see it in Green Computing Foundation. So what are the levers of IT, sustainable IT? Efficient hardware, virtualization, power management, cooling, renewable energy, recycling and end-of-life management, procurement, monitoring and measurement, IT system optimization, and education and awareness. We have to look at each of those. In this course, we are not going into depth of each of it, but just to get an idea. Now, how does ESG for IT help? We have financial value and we have non-financial value. First, financial value. By practicing circularity, we get benefit, we get return out of it, which adds to our revenue. Return on sustainable investment, as I call it, because you improve efficiency, you improve effectiveness, you are going to reduce cost. IT cost and value optimization. Hardware longevity, which again leads to further cost optimization. Energy reduction, your energy bills reduces. Lean operation, again, it has positive impact on your cost optimization. Non-financial values, improve brand perception with your customer, with your peers, attracting like-minded customers, attracting and retaining talent, positive impact on the society, and reducing IT complexity. Because if we have to practice sustainable IT, we have to reduce complexity. We have to make it more simple. We have to make it more loosely coupled and break work into smaller pieces. Risk. Most significant challenge ahead is that of climate action failure, followed by extreme weather and biodiversity loss. I already gave the example of the data centers crashing because of it. When more and more heat waves happen, more chances of power failure will happen because the grid is mainly metal wires, which is providing the power. With too much of heat, it is going to create problems and there will be long blackouts. How are we going to even do business? So business risk, climate risk is business risk. So there are 9 R's of circularity. Recover, recycle, repurpose, remanufacture, refurbish, repair, reuse, reduce, refuse. So we have to practice all of these in our work. That requires innovation, that requires change in our policies. So what are those puzzle pieces of sustainable IT? We will look at the sustainable IT reference model, software application architecture, tools and technology. So what is the IT landscape consisting of? First of all, we have to look at from the organization's point of view. We need to look at the operations, including the infrastructure and managed services. We have to look at the cloud providers, hardware vendors, application development, and utility providers. So from the organization perspective, we are looking at from the top, because sustainability has to come from the top, not bottoms up. So sustainable IT strategy has to be first created, and this is the responsibility of your CXO level, board level. Sustainable IT governance policies has to be created. There has to be sustainable IT reporting, and we can use things like OKR for performance management and reporting. vendor and procurement management, enterprise architecture, application portfolio management, IT hardware lifecycle management policies, and facilities management. So all of these are related to the management aspect, to the strategy aspect. Then we look at the operations, enterprise architecture from infrastructure and managed services aspect. We need to look at cybersecurity from operations perspective. Because why cybersecurity? Because if there is no resilience, sustainability cannot happen. Any outage, whether it is a normal outage or whether it is a cybersecurity related outage, it is going to take a lot of effort to bring back the business to normal. And that means that much more carbon footprint is going to be created. So we have to reduce rework. Data storage and management is a big area because today data is not stored in offline mode. So we have to start thinking how to have a balanced mix of offline online mode. And what we have in online is only things that are necessary. IT hardware lifecycle management, platform engineering, which is important. For example, if you have too many CI/CD pipelines, each pipeline is consuming energy, each pipeline is producing carbon footprint. So if we can reduce it, which platform engineering can help, we can practice sustainability in IT. Utilization and scaling of resources, energy and water usage or wastage, whichever way you want to call it, circular waste management, and technology orchestration and networking. We have to look all of these from the operations point of view. Cloud service providers, we have to look at it from the usage of their servers, storage, database, security, energy and water, circular waste management, technology installation and networking, building and land of facilities. Microsoft's Kansas data center, which trains the AI model, uses 700,000 liters of water every day. And it is having so much of pressure on the power grid that Microsoft has requested to the government to allow them to have their own nuclear reactor to power their data center. So imagine the kind of state that we are going towards. Can we start thinking in different manner? Can we use things where it is only necessary, not recklessly, unethically use technology? For the hardware vendors, we have to look at the server and network equipment, manufacturing, packaging and transportation, recycle and reuse, lifecycle management, energy, water, circular waste management. So we have to see organizations which are more green in their manufacturing, in their transportation, in their delivery of items, that assets that we are using, and they have a policy for proper circular waste management. We have to start looking and selecting those vendors. So those KPIs has to be taken up in vendor evaluation as well as vendor performance management. Application development also has to be done. So instead of looking at developer productivity, which does not really make sense, if the developer has a huge amount of productivity and churning a lot of code, but the code quality is not good, or even if the quality is good, but the customer really doesn't even use that piece of code, that feature, it doesn't make sense, because we know that only 30% or 1/3 of, on an average, is of the new features is what customer likes. 1/3 customer doesn't like or dislike, and 1/3 customer dislikes. So what is the point in wasting our energy, our resources, our time, our cost for building new features which customer will not use, but build features which customer will use? And that's where things like DevSecOps, Canary, deployment, and A/B testing and all feature flag, use of feature flag, and bringing it to the actual customer and understanding it makes sense. We have to look at things like how much less resource the developer is using in creating their feature. So application design and architecture and data design has to be sustainable. Cyber security has to be very well in place, not just use of some tools. Throughout the life cycle, it has to be there so that there is very minimal failure. Application vendor management has to be done using the sustainability KPIs. Open source should be also checked for sustainability. Software coding and resource efficiency has to be looked at. Platform deployments of tools and applications is another area that needs to be looked at. For the utility providers that like your power providers and all, so utility providers like utility grid, renewable energy sources, transition energy sources, fossil fuel energy sources, cooling and heating waste, all those providers, you need to look at how it will help you in being more sustainable. You need to also look at software application rationalization, because you need to have only those applications which you require. In organizations, we see hundreds and thousands of applications running, which leading to only where we only 10%, 20% of the features are being used, rest is not used. There is huge amount of data duplication because of that. So we need to start looking at them, evaluating them, re-architecting so that we sunset those kind of applications where very minimal is being used and bring those features in related applications which make sense to be used, and that brings better efficiency of use in it, and we don't have so much of data duplication. And here you have various steps like OKR setting, data collection, conduct assessment, um, um, then define future roadmap, application portfolio rationalization. So you need to look at all of those. You must have already seen that this came out in various reports, and you can see that different tools that we use have different amount of carbon footprint. So if you look at Ruby, if you look at Python, they are towards the end. So on a 1 to 100 scale, Ruby was around 83, Python was around 75. When a same set of code is being run on all of these different languages, C obviously at 1, C plus plus is at 1.03 kind of, whereas Python and Ruby was towards the end. Towards 11, 12 or 14 was, I think, Go language. So we have to choose the right kind of language. As it says, that Python generates the same amount of emission, a piece of Python code emits the same amount of emission that 5 American cars generate. So we have to be cognizant of these and even select our tools in the right manner. Even if you look at like 400 Kubernetes clusters emits the same amount of emission that a Boeing going from Mumbai to New York uses. So let us go to the last one, which is we will talk about DevSusOps, sustainable IT capability model, materiality assessment, why, what, and how of sustainable IT, sustainable leaders, and sustainable digital transformation. So the point is, if you look at DevSecOps, if you look at SRE, value stream management, if we can work all of these together, if you see the objectives, it is the same. And by practicing them properly, not just using some tools, where we re-architect things, where we use it in the right manner, where when we are moving to cloud, we are actually re-architecting to take advantage of the cloud native, and not every application requires it. So when we do it properly, it is going to help us in being sustainable. A very simple example, we have already talked about innovation and experimentation. That is the third principle of DevSecOps. We talked about cybersecurity to be there throughout the entire life cycle so that cyber outages doesn't happen. we are talking about DevSecOps. We are talking about platform engineering to standardize things, to reduce number of pipelines and all. We are talking about SRE. So from the development side, we have to look at optimizing code, choosing faster language and runtime, not just low code, no code kind of things, which is low code, no code. The objective was different, to have more people to be able to develop because there is scarcity of development resources. But it doesn't reduce our carbon footprint. There's a lot of carbon footprint created because there's a lot of processing that happens till it goes to the base level. So we have to choose the right kind of tools. We need developers to start understanding how the basic work happens for each of the tool. Then only we will be able to use the tool in the way that we need to use. Just knowing how to drag and drop and create some program is not good enough anymore. Choose faster language and runtime, efficient algorithms, faster implementations, reduce logging, reduce retries and work amplifications. Whereas on the operation side, higher utilization, automation, relax over specified requirements, archive and delete data sooner, deduplicate data, choose times and locations carefully, like you can move your workload to low peak time work, to move to peak time load in areas where the grid is green, those kind of data centers. So you can start thinking from all those point of view. So if you look at the sustainable IT capability model, we are talking about the starting, awareness, performing, enabled, and continuous improvement. These are the 5 levels of the capability model. And we have to look from the leadership point of view, from the governance point of view, from the process and tools point of view, from the people and org design point of view, and from the progress and improvement point of view. Materiality assessment. So to do that, we have to understand where are we today, and we have to do materiality assessment. What is materiality assessment? That means things which are material to impact the sustainability aspects. So materiality assessment are becoming increasingly important as investors and other stakeholders demand greater transparency and accountability from companies and their ESG performance. Many companies now incorporate materiality assessment into their annual sustainability report or their public disclosures. So we are looking from we have to set up the enterprise goals and priorities and see how, by doing the materiality assessment, that whatever we are doing are helping us to achieve these ESG goals. So why, what, and how can be, why is support that 1.5 degree target to fight global warming, which we looked from Paris Agreement, shift to circular business models through resource efficiency with a focus on circularity and dematerialization, building a diverse, equitable, and diverse workplace and society underpinned by a culture of trust and high ethical standards, responsible business practices in everything we do. What we aim to reduce our carbon footprint generated by our digital infrastructure while enabling sustainability in IT, by non-IT, by building resilience and adaptability. Our sustainable IT strategy is decomposed into 2 work streams: sustainable IT and enabling sustainability in non-IT by IT. So we are talking about data center and cloud application portfolio, all those that we talked about in the puzzle pieces. And we are talking about GHG emission and visibility and reporting, digital innovation, technology, product as a service, and so on. So it all starts with the leader and the leadership. CIOs plays a very strong role. They have to be technology enabled sustainability, data driven sustainability, collaboration, innovation, so on. And the chief sustainability officer has to work closely with the CIO and we have to move our digital transformation to be sustainable digital transformation. It has to be funded only when it is sustainable. Capabilities needs to be built through a process of awareness, consciousness, and enablement, and continuous innovation through continuous learning and experimentation. And people and culture is most important. So that's what we have. All the best for your exam. Thank you.